Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Book of Love podcast. I am so excited for our guest tonight, Jon Birger, the author of Date-onomics and my new favorite book, Make Your Move. So he is an author and used to be a senior editor at Fortune magazine, but okay, this is going to be the new most referred book and through JE Matchmaking. So thank you so much, Jon, for coming on with us today.
Geneva, thanks so much for having me on. And this is my first Canadian interview.
That's so exciting. So I hope we launch it properly so that you have a great impression of Canada.
I love Canada because Canadians are so much nicer than us Americans are.
Really? Word on the street, that is true. Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
So I'm just going to start with the first question that I ask everybody. And having written two amazing books, I think you have an amazing perspective on this question. So I ask this to everybody, but what do you think the biggest struggle is in today's dating culture?
I mean, I think the biggest problem is online dating.
Okay.
So how often, like you're talking to your friends who are single, how often do you hear them say, you know, Geneva, there's nothing I like more than online dating.
Yeah. Okay, nobody walked through my door and has said that to me.
They said that. But like, if it was Netflix, people like Netflix, right? Like, I mean, there are other apps out there that people do like, but you will never ever hear a single person say, you know what? I just keep having positive experience after positive experience on Tinder, and I just, it's making my life better. I mean, this is not,
it's totally adding value to my life.
Oh yeah. My life is so much better spending 10, 15 hours a week swiping and being threatened and all the other stuff. So yes, I think the dating apps are the biggest problem with modern dating.
Now, what is it about the dating apps themselves that you think is causing the problem in the culture? Like what are the mechanics of that, do you think?
So it's kind of multi-layered. I'm going to start out with the worst stuff first, and then we can go into kind of the next level. But like there was a survey that Pew Research put out last year about women's attitudes towards online dating, and 57% of women have experienced harassment on dating apps. 53% of women consider dating apps unsafe. And 20% of young women on dating apps say they've been threatened with physical violence while they're on the apps. So my take is, okay, if there was a singles bar where 1 out of every 5 women were being threatened with violence, who would go back?
Yes, nobody. Nobody would go back.
Right. Okay.
No.
So that's problem number 1. Now, like I mean, to me, like that should be the end all right there. But I'm going to go, So I guess I don't even want to say this. I mean, I guess maybe you could. No, you can't. I mean, okay. Let's just pretend you could live with the safety issues, which I don't think we should be living with.
Yeah.
But let's just pretend.
Yeah.
The other problem is that the breakup rates for couples who meet on the dating apps are just so much higher than they are for people who meet in real life. I mean, there have been multiple studies on this, all of which I discuss in Make Your Move, the new book. There's a professor at Pace University in New York, Aditi Paul. She looked at this and she found that the breakup rates were about twice as high for couples who meet online, and the marriage rates were half that of people who meet in the real world. Okay. There's another study kind of based on the same data set that was put out by Michael Rosenfeld, who's a professor at Stanford University. And Rosenfeld, if you Google him, you'll see that he's often quoted as being an advocate of the dating apps and of online dating. Mm-hmm. But if you look at his study and you kind of look into you dig into the footnotes and the appendix of his study, there's a table 3, and the headline of table 3 is breakup rates not much influenced by how couples meet. Now, the only way this is true is if you have a very loose definition of not much, because according to this table here, the 1-year breakup rate of couples who meet on dating apps is 16%. For couples who meet through friends and family, it's 9%. For couples who meet as neighbors, 8%. co-workers, which is my favorite way of people meeting, 6%. You meet in college, 6%, meet in grade school, 5%. And if you meet in a house of worship, the 1-year breakup rate is 1%.
Wow.
So, I mean, his definition of not much is not my definition of not much. So if women are being threatened and feel unsafe on dating apps, and the breakup rates are materially higher for online dating versus meeting people in the real world, I don't think I'm going out on a great limb here and saying that a lot of singles would be better off dating people who they actually know in the real world instead.
Absolutely. See, I believe, and this is kind of what I do to my clients, so I'd love to fill you in on this. I believe that online dating has its place, but there's so many people out there that are only exclusively using online dating for their entire dating life. And what that creates is a huge amount of jaded attitudes towards dating because they feel that that is what dating is. So I say it's one toolbox, or it's like one tool in your toolbox, and the rest are, going out and meeting people organically, putting yourself in front of people, keeping an eye on all the singles in your life and keeping an eye on them and creating relationships with that, as well as matchmaker, dating coach, what have you. So, or singles events. What are your thoughts on it just being kind of like a tool, or should we just be eliminating it completely?
So, I mean, I didn't set out to write a book slamming the online dating industry.
But you're making people aware, which is amazing.
Yeah, but actually there are some niche dating apps I like a lot, and I do write about them in the book. But my general take is negative, and I just think I think you're right about there being a lot of singles out there who the only kind of dating they know is online dating. And I think it does lead to people becoming jaded, because the experience of sorting through profiles on Match or Tinder is not that different from shopping on Amazon or shopping on eBay. The whole process is very transactional. As every good shopper knows, if you get something you don't like, it can be returned. And this this kind of fits into what the online dating industry is. I mean, the biggest company in online data is Match Group, which owns Match.com, obviously, but also Tinder, Hinge, OkCupid, and a bunch of other dating brands. If you look at the annual report of Match Group, would you like a list of words that do not appear even once in the
Absolutely.
Okay, these are words that do not appear once in the annual report of Match Group: married, marriage, wedding, couple, boyfriend, girlfriend, spouse, husband, or wife. But what they do say in their annual report is this line: successful experiences drive repeat usage.
Okay.
Translation: you start dating somebody terrific on Tinder, and you'll keep returning to the site to find somebody even more terrific.
In hopes of,
Right, because these companies are media companies, and I worked for a large media company for many years. And media companies are not in the business of bidding farewell to their members or to their subscribers. Their goal is to turn you into a lifelong viewer, a lifelong shopper. I should backtrack a little bit, because I shouldn't assume, and I don't assume, that everybody uses dating apps to find a life partner or a spouse. And I realize that if you're looking for a hookup or a friend with benefits, or even just a platonic friend, there could be good reasons to use dating apps. But my audience, they're typically looking for a life partner. But if you're looking for a life partner, your romantic goals do not align with Match Group's business goals. They want to keep you as a repeat customer.
Now, okay, that's interesting. So when you started writing these books, what kind of motivated you to do this? Because you said that you were a senior editor of the Fortune magazine, and like,
You're right.
where was that shift? Yeah, where was that shift for you?
Yeah.
I'm always curious with that.
So this is the first question I typically get, which is,
oh, really?
Yeah. So it's typically, how the heck, or I don't know, is this a G-rated?
How the heck did you get in? No, you can curse.
Okay.
How the heck?
So the first question is typically, how the fuck did a middle-aged writer for Fortune magazine who used to write about super boring stuff like oil and gas or the stock market, I mean, how did I ever end up writing a book about dating, or in this case, 2 books about dating? And the answer is this: the editorial staff at Fortune was disproportionately women. And I couldn't help but notice that most of the guys, like myself, were either married or involved in long-term relationships. Whereas the women, who I think I can safely say had more going for them dating-wise than we guys did, they were disproportionately unhappily single. And the ones I was close with, they had these dating stories and dating histories that made no sense to me as kind of a guy who got married in my mid-20s. I mean, in my mind, these were women for whom dating should be easy, not hard. And I knew guys for whom dating should be hard, but it didn't seem to be so hard. And I wanted to figure out why it was that dating had become harder for women than for men, particularly for kind of successful, among educated, successful people. And this led to the first book, Date-onomics, which explored how lopsided gender ratios among college graduates have been affecting the post-college dating market, so to speak. So for the past 20, 30 years, we've had 4 women graduate from college for every 3 men. So we now have a post-college dating pool with 1/3 more women than men. So that's what the first book was about. The first book was kind of more pop science than like a advice book, but I kind of realized when I was on book tour with Date-onomics that I should have had more advice in there.
Yeah, we can't have doom and gloom. We got to be like, okay, now this is what we can do.
No,
and
you're right.
To make your move?
I had this really snooty attitude towards the whole self-help genre, and I didn't like the whole idea of being the love doctor was like not not how I envisioned myself. But you're absolutely right. Date-onomics was a little doom and gloom, and I kind of thought that the knowledge is power thing would be enough. But as I'm sure you could guess, or you're probably predicting in your head right now, when I went out and book tour, the knowledge is power thing was not enough. And women would, during the Q&As would be like, great, I feel a little bit better, but now just tell me what to do. And I didn't have an answer for them then.
You know what I loved about one of my favorite things about your book? Now I listened to the audiobook and I loved the audiobook.
I wish my voice was as good as his, right?
I thought it was your voice when I first, I felt like I was connecting to you.
So Geneva, are you disappointed now that you realize my voice is not as mellifluous or whatever that word is? He's
I'm
awesome.
not disappointed.
So his name, I should probably give him a plug. His name is Michael Butler Murray. He's a voice actor and he's great.
Yeah. And when you were talking about, and this is so funny because I have actually had this happen to me several times before. I mean, I have women come into my office as a matchmaker dating coach, and the first thing I'll say is I'll challenge a lot of these people. And this is the first time that they've been challenged on this. And I remember you were telling a story about being in a Q&A, and we were talking about cross-collar dating. Is that what you call it?
Mixed collar dating, yeah.
Mixed collar dating, which we're going to explain. But I loved the reaction of when the woman said, okay, so you're telling me that I need to settle? And then the story went on to the glare that she gave you. And I could just honestly picture the glare because I've had that glare to myself a million times. So tell us a little bit about that story.
So this was at a lecture or book talk I was giving in Boston, and I was supposed to be talking for 30 minutes, but then a woman interrupted me with a question like maybe 10 minutes in, and the whole thing kind of devolved into this like crazy back and forth. It was fun, back and forth discussion in which women were basically unloading all these awful stories. I think at some level it was comforting for them to know that it wasn't all in their head, and the fact that the men were behaving badly and were taking advantage of the fact that they were in short supply. It suddenly kicked in for them. So I basically ended up hearing story after story about all these not so good guys who and these were like lawyers and bankers and white collar guys who had mistreated them. And towards the end of the night, a woman who was completely dressed to the nines, kind of piped up, and she asked me, well, okay, what do I do? And how do I find a guy who's looking for more than just a hookup? And I said to her something along the lines of, well, why not maybe take a break from the wine bar and go to a fireman's pub instead, basically making this argument that look, if there are too many women in the white collar dating pool, that means there are too many men in the blue collar dating pool, which there are. And this isn't just a US issue. This is Canada. This is Europe. I mean, this is not a country specific problem. And I actually, because I coach youth sports, I think I probably know when I'm friends with more blue collar guys than your typical person who lives in a white bread suburb in New York. And they're great guys. And so, but when I suggested this to her, she looked at me like I was offering her like a bowl of wet kibble or something. And and she said, look, you're telling me to settle. And we just heard all these stories about these like terrible guys who had Ivy League degrees, who had mistreated the women in the room. And I'm like, well, why isn't it settling being with them? Well, why is it settling being with the electrician or the cop?
I agree with you. And where do you think that mindset comes from? I mean, I know that growing up, my parents were very adamant about getting university education. And I know that when I graduated from university for the next 4 years, I definitely had that mindset. And then once I was out dating, I realized that the most genuine, amazing guys weren't necessarily those guys. The best interactions I had a lot of the time were the blue collar, hardworking, amazing men. So where does that mindset come from?
So I think it has, not to get too deep in the weeds here, but I think a lot of it has to do with kind of the expansion of income inequality. I think like 50 years ago, blue collar and white collar people might have lived in the same neighborhoods and kind of rubbed shoulders more, rubbed elbows more. But nowadays, like it's less likely, I believe, that you're going to kind of just know somebody from your daily life who's from a different socioeconomic background. And a big theme of my new book, Make Your Move, is what I call date who you know. But if you don't know these guys, it's kind of hard to, it's hard to, I have this line in the book, which I was overly proud of. I think I wrote that it's hard for sparks to fly if you never even rub elbows. I think that's part of the problem. But I think there's a little element of classism involved as well. That people truly believe they can't be happy with somebody who's not exactly like them.
Yeah, absolutely. And okay, so I love that quote. It's hard for sparks to fly when you can't even rub elbows.
I know. I was like, there are a few lines in the book that I was overly proud of, and I think that's one of them.
Because you said you were driving today and you were listening to your audiobook, and I'm sure that they came all back up freshly again to you, didn't they?
It's so funny. Like I was telling you this, on direct message that as I'm listening to him read the book, my arguments sound so much more convincing in my own head.
You're like, this dude is smart.
Yeah, like no, I'm thinking like I was right just because I'm hearing this guy read my own words.
Oh, another human being. Yeah, you're like, man, that guy's smart. Now, thoughts? I'm totally going off script. We had a whole bunch of questions planned.
Let's go off script. I'm all
yeah,
about off script.
I don't really remember what you mentioned in the book in regards to sparks, because I'm anti-spark firework on a first date. Do you know what I mean?
I think sparks, like, not to take the fire metaphor too deep, but I think sparks happen when you actually have kindling, or you have something underneath the logs to get it going, and this is why I'm such a fan of the whole date who you know concept. Can I share a little story?
Always.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I have a friend, or maybe a friendly acquaintance, who's a English professor at Rollins College in Florida, which is kind of a small liberal arts school or college. And Rollins has a kind of a life skills 101 class that graduating seniors are required to take, and it involves everything from personal finance to relationships. And the professor had read an advanced review copy of Make Your Move, and she was interested in the whole online dating segment of the book, and she had me talk to the class via Zoom. And and I gave the class, it was 30 kids in the class, kind of the same argument I just laid out to you earlier. And at the end of the class, a young woman asked a question, and she said, okay, I hear what you're saying, but how am I supposed to meet somebody if not through the dating apps? So I said, okay, and I put the Zoom on Brady Bunch mode so I could see like all 30 boxes on the screen.
Yeah.
And I said, okay, I'm going to ask a question, and I want to see a show of hands. And the question was, okay, how many of you have somebody you know and like and are attracted to from the real world, somebody who's single, and somebody who you've ever wondered about dating? 30 kids in the class, 30 hands went up.
Yeah.
So my take is, if you already have that kind of a knowledge and kind of platonic relationship with somebody, why would you start from zero with a complete stranger on a dating app when there's already a real human being in the real world who you know and like and have been wondered and have an interest in dating? So I think back to the sparks thing, sparks fly when there's already like something fundamental. There's already some connection that's already been made. I mean, I think maybe from a matchmaking perspective, like I hear what you're saying about sparks, because these are, even though your clients kind of view you as a trusted friend in many ways, I mean, they still don't know each other.
Yeah.
Whereas a first date with coworkers or neighbors or friends of friends who you kind of know through a friend group, I think that's a different phenomenon.
There has to be a level of vulnerability in order to agree to that type of thing, though, or to move forward with that. So it's interesting, John. I want to share something with you, too, because we live in a small city here in Halifax. It's population, I think, 350 at this point in the greater HRM, 350,000. And so I have a book of love, which is my matchmaking database. And so rarely, like sometimes the matches that I send out, people know each other. If somebody knows the match that I send them, they will 100% say no. Even if they are like, wow, he's a really great guy, or yeah, she's a really great girl, I do know her from here, I do know her from here. They're going to say no because they will say yes, prefer saying yes to a stranger. Isn't that wild?
I think this, I don't know how, have you noticed this is more of a problem with younger people than with older singles?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so I'm not sure what this is, but I know it's true. I don't know why.
Yeah.
But my sense is that the 20-somethings have this next level fear of awkwardness that, I mean, obviously, I'm 50 and I don't enjoy rejection, and I don't enjoy awkwardness. I don't enjoy vulnerability,
right.
But I can stomach it. And I just get the sense that the 20-somethings have this it's a different level. Like they go out of their way to avoid any level of awkwardness. And I think this is a real problem when it comes to dating, because as you know, like when you take a risk in a romantic situation and it works out, the payoff is enormous. Like you reach out and hold somebody's hand and she holds it back and squeezes, or vice versa. I mean, like that may just be holding hands like from the outside, but that's a real meaningful moment. And if you're afraid of taking any kind of chances like that, I worry, like I worry that this unwillingness to take risks is actually hurting romance.
I absolutely 100% agree. And so let's actually move into the main topic of your book. And I think this is a perfect segue. So the main character, who was the friend at the very beginning?
Samantha. Yeah,
Samantha.
You would like her.
I think so.
Yeah, you would. I could connect you with her if you want. I mean, she's
love that, actually. Yeah, I would love that. Is she speaking on your behalf for the book? Is she a big fan?
She's not. I mean, I don't. I promised everybody I would give them pseudonyms, and I thought it would be weird to like give some people pseudonyms and not give others, but she is exactly the way I described her in the book. She's completely unfiltered and uncensored, and I have no doubt that if I had said to her name is not Samantha, but if I said Samantha, do you care if I use your real name? She wouldn't have cared. And she.
Well, because she does such risk, like, and it's considered, so just so nobody that's listening knows.
Yeah, I know. They have no idea what I'm talking about. Yeah.
No, exactly. So she is this badass heroine that takes on the dating world and makes the first move.
Yeah. So the way this, she and I have been friends for a long time. We know each other from the gym. And after the first book came out, she kind of like cornered me as we were leaving the gym, saying, "Oh, I read the book. I want to tell you what I thought." And
you were terrified because that's the worst sound ever.
I'm actually better with hearing strangers tell me they don't like the book, but
funny. That's what we just talked about.
Yeah, no, like I'm okay. Like if it's, but having a friend like corner me for 20 minutes and point out all the things that she didn't like about the book, that wasn't something I was looking forward to. And and Samantha, she lives her life in a very uncensored way. So I was like, it wasn't a conversation I was eagerly awaiting. But anyway, she told me she liked the book a lot. But a recurring theme in Date-onomics were all these women who just couldn't find the right guy and were struggling, and for whom dating was hard, really hard in their 30s, and they didn't understand why it was so hard. And she told me that this sounded like half of her female friends. But she also made it clear that she had never once had these experiences.
No, exactly.
And I'm not going to like replay the entire conversation, but the gist of it is that the reason she had never had all these had never had these problems, and when I say she'd never had these problems, she had been proposed to 7 times in her life, and she'd been married twice, and she would be the first to admit her love life hasn't been perfect, but it was never for a lack of options. Let's put it that way.
And it's actually, I related to Samantha, and I said this to you in the email too, because, she brought me back to my original before I came, when I became a matchmaker dating coach, I dove so far into it that I forgot what my original skills were when it came to dating. And I was never the beauty queen. I was never the thinnest. I was never the fittest, but I have never had a problem getting a boyfriend when I wanted, or having a lineup of guys interested in me when I wanted. And it was because of the same stuff Samantha did.
Right. And I can just, you and I have spent not so long on Zoom together, but I can tell you have a big personality.
Yes.
And she has a big personality too. And for her, this is actually an outgrowth of her being a military brat.
Oh, cool.
So she moved 5 times before she was 18 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And as you can imagine, if you're switching schools every 2 or 3 years, you cannot be passive or shy, or you'll have no friends because
Mm-hmm.
you're the new kid every 2 years. So
Mm-hmm.
this became kind of, part of her personality even before dating was in the mix. But once she became a teenager, the way she was in the rest of her life became the way she was when it came to dating. And she had this funny story about walking up to the star of the basketball team and asking him to go to junior prom with her. And he quickly said yes. And what she describes as the queen bees in her high school were furious at her.
Yeah.
You know?
Because they were waiting patiently for him to do it.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah. But she was like, why should I wait around? Her whole sort of modus operandi has been making the first move, and her experience and that of other women I interviewed for the book was that it kind of endorsed my idea, which as a guy I've always known, but it's that, men like women who like them. I know women don't believe this. Women have been taught the opposite. Women believe that men cannot be happy with a woman unless she presents herself as unattainable.
Mm-hmm.
And, the goal is to convince her to like him.
Mm-hmm.
I, maybe when my parents were dating, that was true. I don't know, but I've yet to meet the guy who broke up with a woman because she was too enthusiastic about it.
Yeah, it's so true. And it's interesting because you had a really big point in the book that I really liked, talking about the Me Too movement and how it has affected today's dating culture and men's comfort level of approaching women. And this, this standoffish, please pursue me mindset, it doesn't work in the post Me Too movement dating culture because that's harassment.
Right. So if you think about every best-selling dating book that's been written over the past 30 years, from the rules to all the the rule sequels to ignore the guy, get the guy. They all boil down to a really complicated version of playing hard to get. And by playing hard to get, I'm not talking about sex. I'm just talking about pretending you're less interested in somebody than you actually are in order to make them more interested in you.
Yeah.
And again, maybe this worked once upon a time, but the message that these books fundamentally want young women to send to young men, it boils down to not interested means keep trying.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure this ever worked, but as you've kind of alluded to, in the post-Me Too era, this is destructive.
Yes.
And I'm not going to pretend that us guys have learned all the lessons of Me Too as well or as quickly as we should. But I think, and hopefully, I'm interested to see if you'll agree with me on this. But I think most decent single guys have learned at this point that if a woman seems disinterested, the correct response is not to assume she's playing hard to get. The correct response is to leave her alone.
Yeah, and I work with both men and women, so I am a big cheerleader for empowering men in the dating world, and that is 100% true. And what you said that's really important is the decent single guys feel that way. And so when all these women are saying, hey, all my exes are assholes, everybody's an asshole, they're all assholes, is because if you're working with this mantra of hard to get, keep pursuing me, the assholes are the ones that are going to win out. They're going to do the long game, whereas the decent, great guys, they're going to be like, okay, she's not interested, and then he's done. So that totally makes sense.
Yeah, I'm not trying to fix our culture, or I'm just looking at what's advantageous for women, because women are the ones who buy dating books.
Yeah.
And I just believe that a woman, particularly in this post-Me Too world, a woman who is willing to make the first move just has such an advantage right now over women who kind of sit back and wait to be asked out on dates.
And okay, so when I first read the book, or when I first read the book title of Make Your First Move, I was like, oh gosh, I don't know about this. I don't
No,
know.
it's make your move. It's make it, not make, yeah, but anyway, yes.
Oh yeah, you're right. Make your move, make your move. I was skeptical. I'm going to be honest. I was skeptical. And then you caught me in the first chapter, by the way. I was like, okay, this is good. We're good. But
good.
What I love,
I'll thank Sam for that.
Yeah, thanks, Sam. I connected with her right away. But what I loved is that you weren't talking about making your move and then continuing to pursue. Yeah. It was very much make your move, make him aware that it's okay if he pursues you, so then he can then pursue you. And that's what I teach. I teach building a bridge so that him going from, rather than going from 0 to 100 to strike up a conversation with you or to ask you out or to propose or whatever it is, he's then going from 40 to 100 instead. So it's an easier bridge to gap because you made that move.
Yeah, well, one of the other women I interviewed for the book had this interesting line. She said, and she was another one of these kind of badass daters who's not afraid of making the first move with men. And her view was that the less fearful men are about rejection, the more they will engage with you. Mm-hmm. And I mean, her view was that the fact that she made it clear to the guys that she liked them, mm-hmm. kind of made them like more attached to her, because I'm more willing to like engage with her, because I think guys have this. I mean, everybody, not just, you know, this is a gender neutral observation, but nobody loves rejection, right? Mm-hmm. But guys have this kind of extra concern nowadays about being creepy and crossing the line between, I don't even know where the line is between pursuing and creepy, particularly if they're not, if a woman's playing hard to get, anything that a guy does, I think, could be defined as creepy because she's not giving back a signal that she wants to be pursued.
It's interesting because I feel that the men, there's a delicate line between pursuing and being creepy. Women, there's a delicate line of making a move and coming on too strong. So we all have these delicate lines that we need to figure out, and it's all nuances. And the best thing you can do is practice, and that's what a lot of people are not doing, is practicing.
Yeah. So I kind of, as you alluded to before, I think the first moves that I describe in the book and that I endorse in the book, first moves from women, this is not the same stuff that we kind of expect from our alpha male suitors. I mean, I know like the rule followers out there engage in these scare tactics, and anytime you suggest a woman making the first move, they have they throw back this image of some Cruella de Vil type woman like chasing a guy down the street, which is not at all what I'm talking about. Yeah. I mean, there's a story I tell in the book, which is a pretty simple one. There's a young woman I know. She's 29, 30, and she's very attractive, and kind of like you, she kind of has an outsized personality. And as I'm sure you've experienced in your life, that there are guys who are kind of intimidated by the extrovert thing. Yeah. A little bit. Yeah. And this has been kind of her dating story for, most of her dating life. So she was explaining to me how she met her current boyfriend. Mm-hmm. And she said she was at a party and they had been talking for like half an hour, and she really liked him, and she's kind of into the artsy, quirky types, and that was this guy. And they were having a good time, but it was clear to her that he didn't know what to do. Mm-hmm. So she just blurted out, "Are you going to ask for my number?"
Yes.
And that was it. Like, like all she needed to do was open the door wide enough for him to feel safe about walking through. She didn't have to grab his ass or ask him out on a proper date or buy him a drink. Mm-hmm. All she had to do was make him feel comfortable about walking through that door.
And it's interesting that you tell that story, because I have a story about my current boyfriend. We were on our third date and he hadn't kissed me yet. And so I had gone over to his place and we were getting ready to go out for our evening date. And on the way out the door, all I said was to him, I was like, "You know what you should do?" And he turns to me, he's like, "What?" I'm like, "You should probably kiss me." And I didn't lean in. I didn't do anything. And he was just like, "All right." He just like went right for the kiss,
Okay. And I bet, wait, how long ago was this?
Like 6 months ago.
Okay. I bet that story is really important to your relationship, right? You probably tell it and retell it a lot, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And what's nice is these little stories kind of become the mortar for like deeper connections over time.
Yeah. And it's just a big cheeky smile. Like you just say it and then you smile
Yeah.
and you just
Yeah.
let him do it. It's
Yeah.
fun. It's making it fun. It's not taking it so serious.
Right. And
Yeah.
guys are, maybe in 10 years it'll be clearer where the lines are, but guys are still sorting out what's okay and what's not okay. And
They
I
really
just think
are.
women, it's much easier for women because um like yeah, guys aren't physically fearful of a woman making like leaning in to kiss them or something, because most guys are bigger and stronger, and it's a different kind of interpersonal dynamic. And I think that when women make the first move, it kind of takes the edge off some of this stuff.
It absolutely does. Yeah. Okay. So we're just going to finish off this evening with one last question. And like I said, online dating is one tool for the toolbox, even though you hate it. So we'll get rid of it for your toolbox. But for our toolbox, it's one tool. And then there's all these other pockets in the toolbox. How can we fill those other pockets?
So remember that question I asked of the Rollins College kids?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, the question was, is there somebody you know and like from the real world who's single, who you've ever wondered about dating? Yeah. And I asked this question a lot of singles, particularly of single women. And I would say 60-70% of the time, the answer is yes. And particularly with younger women, the percentage is even higher. So again, if there's somebody you already know and like from the real world, who you're interested in dating, well, just start with them. I mean, take a risk, ask them out, embrace the awkwardness, embrace the vulnerability, and don't ask them out in a wishy-washy way, like you want to grab coffee. No.
Yeah.
Like the more you put yourself out there, the more he will do the same. So say to him, hey, I've always liked you. I feel really good around you. Would you like to go out on a date on Friday? Guys are not going to take advantage of that because do you know who Brene Brown is? The author?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So her whole thing, which I agree with completely, is that vulnerability is weakness in me, but courage in you, or vice versa. And I don't think people realize how much making yourself vulnerable kind of engenders feelings of admiration and sort of respect in other people. So if you put yourself out there in a big way, he's going to do the same. So that would be number one. Sort of just think about the people you already know.
So don't say hang out. Don't say go for coffee. Don't say, can we possibly maybe hang out sometime soon? Possibly if you're free, whatever.
No.
It's like, dude, I'm doing this on Friday. You want to come?
Yes. Or I mean, use the word date. Don't, because I know you like those stories from the book about the guys who were oblivious when the women were flirting with them.
It made me laugh forever.
Yeah. I mean, guys really are oblivious. So if you say to him, hey, do you want to grab a drink after work? He may just think you're being nice, which you probably are nice. So don't be afraid to be clear and use the word date. So that's, I'm also a fan of using your friends and family. And I kind of view matchmakers as part of the friends and family bucket, so to speak, that don't be afraid to ask your friends and family for setups. And as you know, that it's complicated because and I've had this experience of a woman asking me if I knew any single men, and I did have a guy in mind, but she was so up here in terms of where I viewed her level, and he was further below, and my relationship with her was the most important thing. So I didn't want to offend her. So I didn't set her up, even though I actually think they might have gotten along. So I think if you're asking for friends and family for setups, you just have to be very clear that look, don't.
I won't be mad at you.
I won't be mad. Yeah. Yes.
I won't be mad. I just want to go out and meet some people. So please feel free. to set me up. And it's funny because I've been matchmaking for 3 years, and I will call people the day after the date. I still have anxiety being like, please don't yell at me, please don't yell at me.
Yeah.
And like they never do, but I always feel this anxiety of like, oh, I wonder if they feel like that was up to par, you know? So that's totally
right. I mean, it must
true.
be worse for you because it's not, it's a business relationship as well.
Yeah.
And they're, yeah.
Yeah.
And then the last thing, I'm always like, my favorite dating site is not a dating site. It's meetup.com.
Yeah, totally.
And like, I'm in favor of, I'm a big fan of like getting out there and doing activities where maybe not everybody's single, but at least you're kind of in a, like a real life, real world situation, whether it's playing on a recreational sports league or a hiking club or bird watching or whatever you're interested in. Just put yourself in social situations where you can meet people. But be smart about it. Like, you're not going to find a guy, you're not going to find men in a cooking class or a book club or something like that. Or yoga. Yes.
Yeah. Maybe one or two, but like, yeah, exactly. Go to where the guys are.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have a great story for you just to finish off that I think you would love. So I had this couple, they came to me separately, sorry for matchmaking. They both built a profile, and I had sent them each other's profile this one day. That same day they had gone, I also told them both to go to a meetup. Just pick a meetup, go to it, like get out there, meet some people. Meetup is a great place to do that. Anyhow, they went to the same meetup. He had received her profile. She hadn't seen the profile yet. He recognized her, asked her out, and said, hey, Geneva actually sent me your profile. So they technically met at a meetup, even though I had sent them as a match that day. But yeah, meetup, man. And then you have to be like, and it's not just going to these places. Like, a lot of people think, okay, well, you know, John or Geneva said for me to go here. It's not going and then just like sitting there with your arms crossed and then walking out once it's done. You have to do stuff when you're there too.
Yeah, and there, you know, there's some real science behind this. I mean, human beings evolved as social animals, and we bond with each other through shared experience. Shared experience is the key to like forming deeper emotional connections. So whether you're kayaking or skiing or bird watching, those shared experiences become really important to developing deeper connections, and not to keep like banging the drum against online dating, but trading carefully worded text messages back and forth is not the same thing as going cross-country skiing together.
Yeah, I agree. Curation, having curated text conversations does not make a relationship. You know, I agree. Well, thank you so much for giving us your time today. And yeah, and I'm so excited to kind of launch you into Canada. I hope that it kind of goes across Canada because everybody needs to read this book.
Can I give people a sense of where they can find me?
Yeah, please go ahead. How can we find you?
So my website is jonbirger.com, and my name is spelled oddly. It's JONBIRGER.com. You can find me on Twitter at JonBirger1. Speaking of book clubs, if you have a book club and you would like me to like do a virtual Q&A with your book club, you can. There's information about that on my website. I'm also part of a platform called bookyaya.com, and you can kind of schedule me to talk to your book club through there.
You also have a blog.
It's on the website. It's on the website.
Okay.
It's on the jonbirger.com website.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much again. And yeah, I hope it rocks and rolls. Everybody needs to read this.
Thank you, Geneva. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks.